Today is August 15th, 2025, and we have a special guest back on the show, Laith Marouf. Laith, how are you doing?
Good. Nice to see you, Kosi and Erica.
Nice to see you too. Laith is joining us from Lebanon. He's an award-winning journalist and political commentator, and he's been working in media since 1999. Laith is also one of the creators and producers of the volunteer TV station and news outlet Free Palestine TV, which can be found on all social media platforms and via freepalestine.video. Free Palestine TV not only has the best analysis of what's going on in Palestine and West Asia of any English language news outlet, but they are one of the best sources of news from the front lines. And Free Palestine TV publishes several videos per day from the front lines of Palestine, including Gaza, the West Bank, and Lebanon. Laith, thank you so much for coming back on the show, and welcome back to the Activist News Network. I am Kosi from the APRP, and my comrade Erica can introduce herself as well.
Yes, thank you, Laith, for joining us. And I am Erica from Black Alliance for Peace.
Well, great to be with you, team. It's been a while, so I'm hoping the Activist News Network crowd are going to be happy that we have a new episode.
Cool. Let's go right ahead. We wanted to ask you first of all about the news from August 7th that the Israeli Security Cabinet approved a plan for the takeover of Gaza. Laith, how serious is this development, and what can anti-imperialist forces, whether civilian or governmental, do to prevent or resist it?
It is serious because up until now, the Zionists have figured that they can do whatever they want to do, kill as many people as they can in front of the cameras, kill even the journalist, and they will continue to receive all the support financially, militarily, diplomatically, and propaganda-wise from the West. Therefore, there is no incentive for them to not do this. So why would they stop if they will have a never-ending supply of weapons to kill people? So yes, they began the invasion of Gaza City, but it's not running as they wish it would, and they have been, receiving huge losses over the last few days. Many ambushes on a daily basis at the edges of Gaza City are leading to huge casualties, and also because the Zionists are having to move very close to Gaza City with their command and control centers. Even the command and control centers at the edges of Gaza City have been coming under intensive bombardment from the resistance. So clearly the plan is there. They want to implement it. Are they going to be able to occupy Gaza City? I doubt it. Will they be killing masses of innocents while they're trying to do this? Yes, they will. And what can the people in Western countries, in Europe, in North America, in Oceania do? Well, there is much that could be done, and the least of it is trying to stop the creation and distribution of weapons in those Western countries. So the model of Palestine Action in the UK is I think the bare minimum that people should be doing in Western countries. There's, of course, many Zionist institutions in the West that could be targeted for occupation, and that should be the job of those who call themselves anti-Zionist Jews. They need to, up until now, it's been 100 years that we haven't seen any anti-Zionist Jew confront Zionism within their own community. We see a lot of anti-Zionist Jews speaking to the public in general, trying to tell us that Zionism is not Judaism, and showing the public in general how Judaism is better than Zionism and has ethics. But there has not been any attempt to dislodge Zionist control of Jewish institutions, and that's the duty of those who call themselves anti-Zionist Jews. It's not my job, it's not the job of Kosi or Erica, who are not Jewish, to try to liberate Judaism from Zionism. And this is a very crucial thing to be done, because as long as the Zionists control all the Jewish institutions, and they do, every Jewish school, every Jewish lobby group, every Jewish newspaper, and what have you, are all under control of the Zionists. As long as the Zionists are in control of these institutions, that means the Western elite will continue to say that they are killing Palestinians and Arabs and supporting the killing of Palestinians and Arabs to defend the Jewish communities that the Zionists speak on behalf. So I think if we collectively, as progressive movements, entice our anti-Zionist Jewish friends to actually take their responsibilities seriously, to confront Zionism within their Jewish community, I think we may be able to bring life into this reality. And I know sometimes people will take this as a harsh criticism, but sometimes we do have to be harsh with our loved ones to get them to do something. And I don't see any way around this. If the anti-Zionist Jewish communities are, relegate their duty to confront Zionism within their temples, within their schools, and so forth, we will find ourselves in a time where actually all Jews are tainted by the crimes of Zionism, and history will record it as such.
Thank you. I actually appreciate that commentary. That is something that we talk about, especially in terms of Christianity. How they we take that to the church and have those messages internally, because whether intentional or not, these things do have a way of emboldening the Zionist project, right? So who do we need to be speaking to?
And if I may get a little personal in here, though I was raised a Muslim, my mother is actually Jewish, and she raised us telling us that the Zionist movement has stolen our identity from her, and that she's hated Israel from the very minute she stepped a foot there as a child, because a member of her family took her there, and she saw that everybody that looked like her and our family was oppressed. And she came back at maybe 13 years old with a deep-rooted hatred for Zionism as a project, and raised us with this. So my anti-Zionism is strongly rooted in my Jewish identity, though I was raised in an Islamic household. So your comment really resonates with us, because even in France, it's just hard for an anti-Zionist movement person to feel at home in any synagogue, because of the prevalence of Zionism in France. And there are a few movements that are trying to fight it, but it's quite hegemonic nowadays, and it's mostly because of Western support. That's how it spread. So, and the repression also that comes with anti-Zionism. So thank you so much for that comment. That means a lot, actually. And it should be inspiring to any Jewish person who's listening right now.
Yes, and of course, we know there is a difference between Judaism and Zionism, as there was a difference between the Christianity of Jesus Christ and what was done in his name in the Americas, or there's a difference between Islam and the Wahhabi cult and ISIS and Al-Qaeda and what they're doing in the name of Islam. What's crucial here is that up until now, for instance, the Muslim community, there's millions of people that have died fighting the attempt to mold a new Muslim in the image of the Wahhabi, kingdoms that were installed by the West. it's been 100 years. They're trying to mold a new Muslim. And up until now, there are Muslims willing to fight to the death for the honor of the religion that they claim to follow and love. Okay. There was Christians that fought against the Crusaders, that fought against, for instance, John Brown, and there was white people that fought and died as martyrs against slavery in the United States. Today, the danger for those who call themselves anti-Zionist Jews, the danger is that they're not directing their educational efforts or revolutionary efforts to their own community. They're directing it to the wider white audience and or the Arabs or the Palestinians, which we don't need education on this, us. It's past that time of trying to educate the masses. Everybody knows this basic of there is a difference between Judaism and Zionism. What is required now is those who love Judaism, do they love it enough to die for its honor, let alone to stop the killing in its name? And that's where I think is the struggle in the West has to be directed towards that. If there is a radical Jewish liberationist theology, radical Jewish liberationist theology that takes up the fight inside the synagogue, inside the Jewish school, inside the Jewish institutions, that will accelerate the liberation of Palestine and will bring back the honor of Judaism. This is where we need to address our colleagues, our comrades that find in Judaism their struggle for liberation.
Laith, as a journalist who is on the front lines yourself, and as we hope to ask you about in a moment, you too have been arrested and disappeared for your forthright journalism. What is your reaction to the brutal assassination of 6 journalists in Gaza last week? A tragic addition to the growing list of Palestinians in Gaza that have been martyred in the outgoing Israeli genocidal aggression. Could you share your thoughts and analysis, perhaps, on this and how it reflects the Israeli settler state's ability to operate and with complete impunity, and why they target journalism in particular?
Yeah, I mean, the number of journalists killed in Lebanon and Palestine over the last 23 months is past 280. This is journalists and media workers. And as we saw, the last 6 that were killed in Gaza, they were defamed and for weeks before their targeting, and openly the Zionists said they're going to target them, and openly they did, and openly bragged about it after killing them. And this shows you how brazen and emboldened the Zionists are. After killing 274, they're now comfortable enough to kill another 6 while bragging about it, and to defame them after their death also. And for the Western media to also participate in this defamation after the death. We saw the front line of the Bild newspaper, the most read newspaper in Germany, call Anas a member of a terrorist organization of Hamas openly in the headlines. Similarly, that happened in the National Post in Canada and other newspapers in the United States. So this shows you how ineffective or unthreatening, actually, the movement for solidarity of Palestine is in the West. Otherwise, if the editors of the Bild or the National Post in Canada felt that if they publish something like this, that some citizens will occupy the offices of the Bild or the National Post, take it over, and liberate it, and print out a new edition from a liberated newspaper. If they thought that this is even a possibility, they wouldn't dare put such a headline. But our, movements in the West have been neutered, made into this liberal feeling, glob, and that blob that doesn't do nothing but move on the street ineffectively, headless. There is sometimes that leaderless movements are good. Sometimes they are actually the worst thing that you can ever think about. And what we see right now is that the ineffectiveness of the movements to do anything beyond fill the streets, okay, has emboldened the politicians and the media that are genocidal to actually go even further than they were going, in the beginning of this genocide. Look, the number of journalists, media workers killed in this war is more than those who were killed in all the major wars since World War I combined. And this is a, I don't know, like it's a sci-fi number almost. It's something that nobody could have imagined could happen in such a small period of time, in such a small geographic area, for these numbers to happen. And finally, in terms of my detention, after, of course, seeing what has been happening in Palestine for, almost 2 years to the journalist, either in the field and or in the dungeons of the Zionist colony, I feel very lucky to have been detained by the Lebanese military intelligence. I came out alive. I didn't get tortured, and I got an apology and authorization to go anywhere in the country to produce my content. Like, that's something that I couldn't imagine that today. If I was caught in Canada or the US, I would also be disappeared and tortured. Look at what's happening to people. Even Ali Abu Ni'meh being arrested of electronic intifada, arrested in Switzerland for 3 days, the same amount that I was arrested here in Lebanon. He didn't receive an apology from the Swiss intelligence. So it is a upside down world, a twilight zone that we're in now. Everything is crazy, honestly, and things are going like nobody can even imagine them. And I was very shy to even talk about my detention because of the realities that we see of what's happening to journalists around the world. Although my detention here for those 3 days is the longest detention of any journalist in Lebanon since 1990, since the end of the civil war, quote unquote, civil war in Lebanon. But it's still nothing in comparison to what's happening to our brothers and sisters in the media inside Palestine. And I also, of course, know that the more that I'm doing this work, the bigger possibility that I will be also a victim. There is 7 media workers that were killed here in Lebanon. Our team was targeted with 2 missiles during the 66-day war. And we were lucky that the missiles didn't hit us. And we had shots fired at us before and drones flying around our car very low and following our car in the front lines when we're filming. But, this is a duty. Our duty as journalists is to be in the place where the viewer, the reader cannot be, okay, and to it's also part of the war. I know my role as a media journalist, is to bring the voice of the people on the ground here, and it's a battle. And my fate is not more important than the fate of the fighters actually carrying arms and risking their life to defend their country, and or the civilians that are staying in their homes and targeted anyways. So I feel, on the one hand, my life is not more important than any other life in Palestine, let alone any other journalist's life. And on the other, that it is my duty, and if I die in this path, I'm a martyr, because that's my job, is to fight this battle.
Thank you for that. Well, for the sake of the viewers, I just want to know that this arrest happened on July 20th by Lebanese officials. So I don't know if there's any other details about what led to this that you might want to give, but I do appreciate you speaking about the importance and understanding the role.
Yeah, I mean, what we know is that the Israeli military, we were going out in the field to record a night report from Maysa Jabal. Maysa Jabal is a Lebanese village on the border with Palestine. In fact, it's one of the most remote villages. It's kind of in a peninsula of Lebanese territory with 3 bases on 3 sides of it, the 3 Israeli bases. And so the Israelis were attacking construction equipment, excavators and tractors in the village and around in other villages in the south to frustrate reconstruction efforts. And those raids were coming at night. So we wanted to go record a night report to help our audience, see the attacks happening at night and how does that feel, and the reality of that. We don't do many night reports because it's very dangerous. The Zionists freak out seeing cars coming to the south in the middle of the night. So what I know after my release, what I was told by the military intelligence here, is that the Israeli military threatened to attack our car and called the UNIFIL, the United Nations forces here in South Lebanon, and they alerted the Lebanese military. Lebanese military intelligence didn't know of our arrival, and that started the whole situation where I was detained for them to know more and investigate if I'm collaborating with the Zionists or not, while actually, the Zionists were threatening my life, but they had to do their investigation. I was released eventually with no conditions, no charges. And as I said, I have now, permits that I couldn't dream of having before this arrest.
Thank you so much for these details, and I'm quite relieved that it went so well. We were all worried for the few days you stayed in, so I mean that's good news, and I hope it will help you further your work. Going back to the West for a little bit, as you probably know, there's a growing number of countries, many of which have historically enabled and continue to enable the Zionist project through either inaction or direct collaboration, that are now recognizing the state of Palestine in response to the global pro-Palestinian movements. How should we be analyzing this shift, and what, if anything, can truly be gained from these recognitions of the Palestinian statehood?
Yeah, well, I think this is mainly theatrical. On the one hand, it's because of the overwhelming shift in public opinion in the West, and the kind of situation that is a pressure cooker that is happening within Western societies. Most of the citizens are overwhelming against the genocide, and the fact that the politicians are not responding and the media is not responding to the public positions, this is creating a schism and mistrust between the state and the media and the populace. And this is dangerous for these elites. We saw already how this pressure cooker led to a Christian South American immigrant in the United States or son of immigrants to carry arms and shoot two Israeli embassy staff in Washington, D.C. So you could imagine how much pressure is building up in societies like France, for instance, that has a huge Arab and Muslim population, and or the UK. And so with the close-up and banning of the non-violent Palestine action, this is even enticing more people to become violent in their opposition to the genocide being committed in their name in the West. So we have to think about it. On the one hand, this is just a release valve for the pressure that's building up in Western societies. On the other, it's an attempt to re-legitimize Mahmoud Abbas, the treasonous, collaborationist, unelected president of nothing, and his absence from all the international scene, and even the Palestinians even forgetting that he exists. This is all about that. And finally, the other part is their attempt to bring the Palestinian quote-unquote authority back into power into Gaza if this war is stopped somehow. So all of these are tied into this effort, and it's all about guaranteeing the existence or the continued existence of the Jewish supremacist colony, right? So we, look at the details of this supposed two-state solution or the recognition of Palestine. They want to recognize a Palestine that has no weapons, that is disarmed, that has no control of its borders or its airspace. Therefore, it's really an Indian reserve, like in the United States or Canada, and or a African Bantustan in the middle of an apartheid. Some Canadian nations, indigenous nations, carry a flag, and they have a checkpoint at the beginning entrance of their reserve. But do they have any sovereignty, control, trade, nationhood, real nationhood? No. So this is the best they can offer at this moment, and it's all as part of the effort to maintain the Zionist colony as a Jewish supremacist state and to shore up the collapsing collaborationist Palestinian Authority. That's ultimately.
Laith, I think it's interesting that you mentioned DC, because we opened with the question about August 7th and the announcement of the annexation and occupation of Gaza City. But then 3 days later, on August 11th, Trump has a press conference where he announces the federal occupation of DC. So currently that's going on where the National Guard is occupying the capital of the US. But also, I think it's very interesting that the question of statehood that you raise, because I see very interesting parallels around what does that even mean to have a state or be declared a state, under a settler colony, because the issue with DC is that it is not a state, right? And much of the argument is that there is arguments for statehood, but when we look at just right next door in Maryland, right, or in Virginia, and how occupied these areas are, or in New York. So what does it mean to be a state? And I think what you just raised around the question of statehood for Palestine is not really indifferent from what we're seeing or experiencing here in DC, because much of that is, well, who's going to control the state? Because the current mayor happens to be in Martha's Vineyard, and having family time while the city is under occupation.
Yeah. Look, obviously, what I'm reading about what's happening in DC with those plans to wipe out whole communities, you can put it in the category of imperial boomerang, right? what has been normalized at the far edges of the empire in the killing fields is now being normalized inside the core of the empire. And look, statehood of DC or not statehood of DC, Trump can do whatever he wants to, as we saw he did in California. I mean, the governor and the mayors came out against deployment of the National Guard and the Marines, and they did anyways. So, all of these issues come back to the word sovereignty, and sovereignty is not a slogan, it's a force of facts, okay? And if you can't force sovereignty, enforce your sovereignty, you're not a sovereign. So even with the issue of Puerto Rico, for instance, right? Like, what if they give Puerto Rico actual seats in the Congress? How is that going to change the colonial realities of Puerto Rico? That's not going to change. The people of Puerto Rico need to assert their sovereignty with or within or without a American representation. And up until now, of course, both in Washington, D.C. and or in Puerto Rico, for decades, anyone that was pushing for real sovereignty is targeted by the imperial state. Palestine, the future of the Palestinian people, what's going to happen to us, how we are treated, is an indicator of how all humanity will be treated if the empire gets away with this. We're just a predictive future to what's going to happen to everybody else if nobody stops the empire at its place, if we don't defeat Zionism and force a retreat of the imperial hordes that are now knocking on the doors in the neighborhoods in the United States.
Yeah, you're very right. And I don't even want to decenter Palestine because that's the topic at hand. But even recently, on the 12th of July, France has signed an agreement with supposed representatives of the struggle for independence of Kanaki, or what the French like to call New Caledonia. And they did that while many of them were either exiled by force by France or in jail still, after months of uprising. And I found that interesting that the notion of freedom, like you cannot negotiate freedom with your oppressor. The only freedom that we know of is struggle that was is freedom that was obtained by the struggle. So the fact that they want to marginalize the resistance in Palestine and center that state is very interesting, because you can see parallels and similar strategies have been done before and are still being done as we speak. And that's also the project they have for the colonized islands of Martinique and Guadeloupe, for sure. So you can see there are commonalities in the type of strategies they put up, they put together in order to maintain power over the colonies. And it's crazy that all this is happening at the same time. As you said, it's unreal.
Yeah, the French elite and the French state is still reeling from losing Haiti, a couple of hundred years ago. They still can't forgive the islanders all around, or allow them to even think of reaching that moment of the Haitian Revolution. And if any of those nations, peoples living in these islands really want independence and sovereignty, they can't go to the democratic, quote unquote, way, because as we see, democracy is not allowed to them. Anytime there's a hint of independence through democracy, they're all rounded up and oppressed, and democracy is thrown in the garbage. And so, Also, it's also important for peoples around the world that are questioning independence, sovereignty, liberation, to take advantage actually of the Palestinian struggle. Look, we here in this region are taking a beating on behalf of the whole world. This is why nations in the Sahel are able to escape this colonial machinations, because the whole machine of empire is now directed for the slaughter here, right? Peoples in Kanake and in Latin America, in the Caribbean, they should take advantage that we are keeping the hordes busy, okay? And start your own uprisings, start your own liberations. You know what? That will actually help us also as Palestinians. So our thinking about what can constitute internationalist solidarity, and or what can constitute as solidarity from somebody in a French territory with Palestine, should grow to understand this conceptualization. A person in Puerto Rico carrying arms for liberation against the American occupation actually will help in the liberation of Palestine. See, so we have to see how radicalism is cumulative on a global scale. It adds up together. A struggle for liberation anywhere helps my struggle of liberation here in Palestine, in Lebanon, in the region, and our struggles here for liberation help everybody else.
Thank you so much. I want to follow up with a question on regional politics and geopolitics in West Asia and beyond. And we wanted to ask you about the latest news from Iran and the rumors of a possible further US-Israeli aggression against them.
Yeah, it's very likely, if not 100% sure, it's going to happen that there will be a return to this war. Look, what started in October 7th is not a regional or local event. It's a global event. And the repercussions of whatever the outcome is are definitely existential. And the Zionists know this. Look, imagine the Zionists stop the war right now. There's now enough record on the whole planet to prosecute and every Zionist colonist in Palestine. And they will be hunted forever. Okay, so they know that this is an existential issue. They cannot stop it, the war. And therefore, they have to continue in genocide. That's the only thing that they know they have the support of from the Western elite. If they stop, the Western elite will have to deal with the reckoning, and therefore they will be abandoned at some point. Therefore, they have no choice but to go forward in their genocidal agendas. And so the war in Lebanon will return, most probably before a war in Iran, and that actually itself will trigger a war that includes Iran. And so we had a round one. The US and the Zionist colony got a whipping. All the weapons of the Western Empire were used. Everything in the highest technologies below the nuclear threshold was used to defeat Iran, and Iran defeated them. Therefore, what's going to come is going to bring us even closer to a nuclear war. And that's another one of those alarm bells that everybody should, in the West, actually take very seriously, because we haven't gotten to that threshold of just below the nuclear threshold since World War II. And therefore now, any attack on Iran, if the US and Israel really want to defeat it, will for sure end up with the use of nuclear weapon.
Thank you. So as someone living and reporting from Lebanon, what can you tell us about the proposed plan to disarm Hezbollah? And while we recognize that Lebanon is incredibly diverse culturally, ethnically, and religiously, how has this plan to disarm Hezbollah been received by the Lebanese people?
Yeah, there was multiple things that happened since this, unconstitutional plan was pushed by the Prime Minister, Prime Minister Nawaf Salam. And there's a few things that people need to understand. One is the history of the Salam family in collaboration with the Zionists. Goes back to the 1920s and 1930s. The grandfather of this prime minister looted, defrauded the villagers of the Hula Valley, which is kind of the panhandle of Palestine that sticks up, and paid off Ottoman record agents to change the ownership of the Hula Valley from the local villagers to his name. And then with the help of the Zionists in the 1930s, drained the Hula Lake, which was a huge lake north of the Sea of Galilee and the swamps around it, and then sold it for tens of millions of dollars to the World Zionist Organization. This is the grandfather of the current prime minister. And he had the same plan, the grandfather, to also defraud the Lebanese villagers in the south of the Litani River, in the south of Lebanon, with the same ways of paying off Ottoman record registrars. He couldn't move fast enough. So his grandfather of this current prime minister is willing to give up all of South Lebanon to the Zionists for some money. So this is the record of this family. It's not, this prime minister is not just out of the blue collaborating. It's in his blood. Okay. Now, having said that, the Lebanese resistance, Sheikh Naim Al-Qasim, the new Secretary General, just spoke this morning. Today is the 40th, the Arba'in, which is the 40th day after the martyrdom of Hussein bin Ali, the grandchild of Prophet Muhammad. That's commemorated every year. And so Sheikh Naim Al-Qasim in his speech said that the resistance will not hand over its weapons, and that basically they will fight to the last man to keep their resistance weapons, and that they are ready for a Karbala of the century. Okay, and that's a reference basically to the Battle of Karbala, where Hussein, the grandchild of Prophet Muhammad, was assassinated along with the majority of the people of the family of Muhammad, the women and children, surrounded by tens of thousands of soldiers from the usurper emperor Umayyad of the Umayyad empire. So that's saying basically we're ready to fight the whole world, and we're ready to die like Hussein, even if that is what's going to be required. So this is the end of the discussion today with the speech of Sheikh Naim Al-Qasim. I think there is no more discussion beyond that. Okay, and so we will see what's going to happen in the next few days and weeks. There is a very big possibility that the commander-in-chief of the military, General Haikal, will refuse the orders because he knows that there will be either a mutiny within the military and or an actual war within the military, a civil war within the military, before there is even a civil war in the country, if he attempts to deliver on the demands of Prime Minister Salam.
All right, thank you. We also wanted to follow up on another front and ask you about the latest news regarding Yemen. As we know here, Yemen has been under imperialist pressure and aggression for a good while now, and yet they are still on the vanguard of solidarity and support of the Palestinian struggle. So what are the latest news regarding this front?
Yes, so yesterday they fired 2 hypersonic missiles on the Zionist colony, the Yemeni armed forces, and the day before they fired, I think it was 5 drones on bases in the south of occupied Palestine. And also yesterday, the head of Yemen, Abdel Malik Houthi, also gave a speech that was mainly directed to the Lebanese elite and government and the Saudi government and what have you. So you could see how things are very connected. And he spoke very aggressively against the collaboration of the Lebanese government in the attempt to disarm Hezbollah and the Saudi pressure and money that's behind that. Those were very high level statements and indicate that they also, he said, they will not leave Hezbollah alone if it's attacked. So we can see that this is indications that if there is a war in Lebanon, that it will drag the whole region. By the way, just earlier that yesterday also, and the day before yesterday, the head of the Supreme Council, Strategic Council in Iran, Larjani, was in Lebanon meeting with the president and the prime minister and also Hezbollah leadership. And they came out with statements also that are very similar, saying they will not allow Hezbollah to be disarmed or attacked. So Yemen fits perfectly in this because the efforts to disarm Hezbollah are really funded by the Gulf countries. And the Gulf countries, if they see that they're going to have to pay a price for their interference in Yemen interference in Lebanon, because Yemen will attack them, then things may change. But house slaves will do whatever their master tells them. So I personally expect that the Saudis and the Emiratis and the Qataris will be willing to burn their own house if master says so. And that's master is saying so, and they will jump to the queue.
Laith, the last time you came on the show in May, so it's been a while. Quite a lot has transpired in Syria since then. In fact, even the U.S. handpicked puppet leader of Syria, Abu Mohammed al-Julani, who has been rebranded as Ahmad al-Shara, who bowed to both U.S. and Israel, somehow didn't prostrate far enough for Washington and Tel Aviv, and was targeted and attacked by Israel. Not to mention the ongoing and intensifying conflict in Sweden. Laith, can you explain what has been going on in Syria as of late?
Yeah. So there's multiple things. One is, of course, we saw over the last month, ethnic cleansing campaigns being directed towards the unitary Muslims, or what is referred to commonly as Druze, in the Suwaida region in south east Syria. And to contextualize it so people can understand, Syria and revolutionary movements in Syria historically came from 3 regions: Deir ez-Zor in the northeast, Suwaida in the southeast, and the coast mountains. And so those 3 communities that are far away from the main city areas between Aleppo and Damascus were always where revolution starts in the country, including the Great Syrian Revolt against French occupation, led at the time by my grandfather in Deir ez-Zor, Sheikh Muhammad Saeed al-Arfi, and the Amir Sultan al-Atrash of the Druze in Suwaida, and the leadership of the Alawites in the mountain. Why would the revolutions come from the geographic edges? Is because usually the business class in cities doesn't like change or upheavals, and will just go with whoever is stronger, right? And always revolutions start from the edges of a society. Now, the Americans went with the Zionists and the Wahhabis. Their 15-year plan for Syria was, the first thing is to destroy Deir ez-Zor and burn to the ground the cities of Raqqa and Deir ez-Zor, and the proud Arabic tribes of the area became homeless. All their resources looted, their gas, oil, wheat, and cotton. And anybody that has any history, like myself, of familial resistance were either killed, and thus that whole history of resistance is gone from a whole generation. Then once the fall of Assad happened, they moved on to the Alawites in the coast, and they killed all their doctors, their engineers, their thinkers, their children, of anybody that has also that history. And finally, the last part of the Syrian populace that needed to be basically neutered were the Druze in Suwaida. So this is the bigger picture of what is happening. Why are these things happening in the way they are happening? And up until now, neither HTS was able to defeat the population of Suwaida that picked up arms and fought back. And the ploy to have the Israelis enter and attack HTS after it committed most of the rapes and killings, to kind of entice the Druze population of Suwaida to call for protection from Zionism, that also failed. So we're in a standstill here, and this only, exaggerated and exasperated the situation for al-Jolani and his weakness. Now it's clear to anyone he cannot govern the country, not the south, not the northeast, not the coast. So, and the cities cannot survive without the geographic edges that bring all the food and so on into the city. So things are not moving as the West wants it to move. There's still hope in Syria, even at this lowest moment in its history of 100 years. But there's still hope in Syria, and the West is only overstretching itself with these wars.
Thank you very much. I had the last one for you before we part. We mentioned Yemen. We mentioned also the assassination of journalists. This happens in a context of weaponized hunger and manufactured famine, especially in Palestine right now, in Gaza. And what we've witnessed here in the West is a rising global outcry, over this. That includes individuals who've previously supported the war, and that's from October 7th. So I wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts on the humanitarian reframing of the consequences of the Zionist aggression?
Well, they can't deny their eyes anymore. I mean, they tried for a long time, the Western media, to lie openly to the public, but 23 months of nonstop broadcasted images by the brave journalists on the ground and the citizen journalists that were sharing their life has made it impossible anymore to control the narrative on this issue specifically. So it was crucial for the West to find a way to manipulate this narrative into something that's better for them. And that's what we saw with the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, whatever it is, that killing machine. And look, the situation is really dire for anyone that has medical issues, children, pregnant women, elderly, and many people are dying on a daily basis from the effects of starvation. I don't think the West will stop the starvation of the Palestinians. They will try to manage it. You know, the West has a huge history of mass starvation ploys against many nations, from Ireland to India to Kenya to indigenous nations. I mean, look, what's happening to the Palestinians in Gaza every day is like a repetition of the trail of tears, you know, that the indigenous people in the United States had to live through. You know, you have to move from here to here, and you're going to die on the way, and then you're going to have to move from here to here, and then you're going to die on the way. And this is what it is. There's nothing new, and of course, because the Western Empire has hundreds of years of you know, history of doing this, they're perfected the whole stages of this mass starvation. Obviously, they have to you know, tweak it differently because of the non-stop 24-hour social media. But this is a crucial weapon in the arms and the hands of imperialism for hundreds of years.
Well, if you can imagine, that's not all we have, since we haven't seen you since May. But I do think this is maybe a good point to conclude, and also maybe another reason to bring you back, and we can do this more often again, unless there's anything else that you want to add.
Thank you very much for having me, Kosi and Erica, and definitely would love to be back again.
Well, thank you so much, Laith, for coming back on the show, and we look forward to speaking with you pretty soon, next week perhaps. So to our audience, thank you for tuning in, and please support the work, that incredibly important and courageous work that Laith and the other volunteer journalists are engaged in with Free Palestine TV by donating to Free Palestine TV via freepalestine.video. Thank you again.
See you soon.